Hello and welcome to this video that is intended to show you how to use the basic features of GIMP. The video is intended to be used with the class materials that are provided as part of the Northern College's Introduction to Computer Game Design course. So the idea is that you watch this video and use the written materials to sort of talk you through some of the other aspects of it. GIMP is quite a complex program and it can be quite daunting for new users. But the purpose of this video is to give you an idea of how some of the different functions interact. It's not intended to be a full-scale tutorial, just to give you the idea of how the basics are used and how they interact with one another. So the key thing that I'm going to introduce in this video is the GIMP tools, or some of the GIMP tools, not quite all of them, but some of them. They can be found in the toolbox at the top left corner. Your display of tools might be slightly different depending on the screen resolution and also how wide you have this section. So it may be you've got them stacked in sort of a 4x4 grid, or you may have got them just across two rows here. It doesn't matter how you have them, that's personal preference, but when you hover the mouse over them, you'll see a pop-up that explains what those tools do. And you'll notice that not all of the tools are just a single tool. Some of them have more than one tool. And what I mean by that is, let's take the select tool. This has two tools under this button, which is the fuzzy select tool and the select by color. And if you want to change the tool, you click your left mouse button and hold it down, and let's say I wanted select by color, I'd move my mouse down onto select by color and release it, and you'll notice that it's changed into the select by color tool. So let's say, for example, you've got the pencil tool here. Let's say that I prefer to use the paintbrush. I'm going to click and hold the mouse and move it over the paintbrush, and it changes to the paintbrush tool. You can also use, if you're comfortable, you can also use some of the keyboard shortcuts that are presented in front of you. So the two documents I'm going to use to guide me through this, and the documents that you should use to guide you through this, are the Getting to Grips with GIMP booklet, which will basically, this is where I'm getting the task instructions from. I'm following that booklet as I work through the tasks that I'm going to work through on this video. And the second is the GIMP functions booklet that details some of these groups of tools and explains a little bit more about them, and it will also, there's also a little section on why they may or may not work, because GIMP can be a little bit temperamental and you may be doing something and it may not work. In that GIMP functions booklet, it will give you some idea of, if you've got a problem with it, how do you troubleshoot it. You will need both booklets to be working through these activities. During this activity, I'm not going to be drawing anything in particular. I'm just going to be making some shapes and colours on a screen. If you wish to sort of stretch this out into actually drawing something, then so be it. But this video for me is really just showing you guys how to make use of the main functions. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open a new image. I'm going to create a new image, and I'm going to go to File and New. And I'm going to make the width and the height of this image 1000 pixels by 1000 pixels. I'm going to click OK. And you'll see when you do that, you'll see this image will appear, this blank image will appear on the screen in front of you. If you hold down Control and roll your mouse button, you can zoom in on sections. If you hold down your middle mouse button, you can move around the image itself. So if you zoomed in quite a lot, you can use your middle mouse button to sort of zoom, to move around and see different sections of the image. So I'm going to zoom so it's about roughly in the center of my screen. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move over here to the rectangle select tool, and I'm going to click it, and I'm going to draw a rectangle, and you'll see when I release it, you'll see it's got this black and white sort of crawly line around it, which is known as the crawling ants, and that indicates that something is selected. Now I'm then going to move over to the bucket fill tool, and I'm going to click once to select it, and you'll notice there's been a slight change here, but you can still see the crawling ants, which means that that rectangle is still selected. And I'm going to click on this this foreground colour here, and I'm going to sort of change the colour to a reddy colour and click OK. And now when I move my cursor over the selected rectangle and left click, it fills the rectangle with a red colour. Now I want to get rid of that selection. I don't want anything to be selected on the screen, so I'm going to press Ctrl and Shift and A to deselect, and you'll notice that that rectangle, that crawling ants rectangle, has disappeared. Then I'm going to go back into group 2. I'm going to click my left mouse button and move my mouse over ellipse select. And I'm going to go into my rectangle, left click, and I'm going to draw an ellipse. I'm going to pick the bucket fill tool. I'm going to click the colour. And this time I'm going to pull this down here, and I'm going to pick a blue colour. Click OK. And I'm going to move into my selected ellipse. And I'm going to fill it, and I'm going to press Ctrl, Shift and A to deselect it. And now I've got a rectangle and an ellipse. So I've deselected my ellipse, and now I'm going to reselect it, but this time using the fuzzy select tool. So I'm going to move my mouse over to 4. I'm going to click and hold my mouse button down and pick fuzzy select. And now when I click in the circle, it selects based on the colour and the existing shape. And the fuzzy select tool is a really useful tool for grabbing selections of colour or selections within an outline. And then I'm going to tap the delete key. And my colour has disappeared. It's now sort of cut a hole, if you like, in that red rectangle. But then I'm going to go back to my bucket fill tool. I'm going to click it. And because this selection is still active, you can still see the crawling ants. I'm going to left click and turn it back to blue. I'm going to press Ctrl, Shift and A to clear that selection. So I'm going to go to my paintbrush tool, and I am going to use the paintbrush in this case. And I'm going to pick a colour that is similar to the one of my rectangle, which is a sort of a reddy colour. Similar, but not the same. So I'm going to move down here, and I'm going to pick a darker, sort of a more faded red. And I'm going to click OK. And with my paintbrush tool selected, you'll see that you've got all these options here. You can pick a different type of brush. You can change the size of the brush, its aspect ratio, and the hardness and the force on which you press. Imagine if you press harder on it with a pen on a piece of paper, you get a thicker, darker line, and those settings control that. I'm going to change the size to about 20. And when I move my mouse back in, you can see that the cursor's increased in size to match that. And I'm just going to paint a patch. Just going to draw a little patch on here. I'm going to fill that in. So I'm clicking down with my left mouse button, and I'm just moving my mouse around. And then I'm just going to let go of the mouse button. And now I'm going to move my mouse over to the selection tools. I'm going to click my left mouse button, hold my mouse, and I'm going to move it to select by colour. And now when I move it back over here and left click on my patch, you'll see that it's only selected our darker colour. Now these selection tools have something called a threshold. And what the threshold is it's how exact it wants the colour to be, the colour selection to be. The broader the threshold, the more it will select. And I'll show you that by turning the threshold right up to the top. And now, when I click on my darker patch, it's actually selected everything. If you see the crawling ants, right, it's because it's selected everything, because it's really broadened the colour it wants to select. Let's pull it down to about halfway. Now let's try it. It's selected the rectangle, it's selected the circle, and it's selected the dark patch. So that what it's saying is this is essentially saying select the pixels nearest to. The lower the threshold is, the more specific about the colours that it's going to select. Let's put it down to about a quarter of the way down. And now it's picked the dark colour and the blue colour. Whereas if I turn it all the way down to 1 and click, it selects only the colour that I've clicked on. So the threshold is a good way of managing what you are selecting. If you want a broader selection, turn up the threshold. A slighter selection, a narrower selection, turn the threshold down. Now, I'm going to press Ctrl Shift and A to deselect. And I'm going to show you a little bit more about how selections work. So I'm going to go up here, hold down my mouse until the menu pops up. I'm going to pick Rectangle Select. And I'm going to draw a selection there in the top left corner. Now, when I take my paintbrush, and I'm going to pick a completely different colour to illustrate the point, I'm going to pick a bright green. When I try and paint with my paintbrush, you'll notice that nothing's happening. Because while ever you have a selection active, i.e. while ever you have the crawling ants on your screen somewhere, you can only ever draw or edit that selection. So if you observe, you'll notice it starts drawing the green when I move inside the selection. And this can sometimes be a bit frustrating, because you'll be trying to draw something and you'll be thinking, why isn't it drawing? Why isn't it drawing? And often one of the culprits will be that you have a selection active. So if that's the case, hold down Shift, Control and tap A to get rid of the selection, and now you can draw anywhere on the screen. One useful thing about selections and this aspect of it is that if you select a particular section, it's almost like drawing within the lines. With a particular selection, with a particular selection active, you can only ever draw within it, and that is a good thing if you're wanting to only draw within a particularly small area. So for example, if I wanted to change that little section there to green, I could just sort of scribble here. If I pick my paintbrush, I can anyway. I can just scribble here, and the only bit it will fill is the bit that I have selected, and that's quite a useful tool. But it can also be a bit of a pain if you draw in and it's not drawing anywhere. It could be that you've got a selection active. So Control Shift and A to get rid of it. Now, if you press Control and A, you will select everything. And with everything selected, any action that you make, for example, delete, will delete everything that's selected. If you do make a mistake and you delete something you don't want to, press Ctrl and Z to undo it. So if you haven't done already, press Ctrl and Z to bring your image back. And now we're going to take a look at layers. And layers are kind of individual sections of an image in GIMP that can be manipulated separately, but actually contribute to the whole image. And I'm going to show you how to use layers by, first of all, creating one. I'm going to right click in this section here, and I'm going to go to New Layer, and I'm going to call this layer Foreground. I'm going to press OK. And you'll see that it appears here. and you've got two layers. You've got the foreground and the background. The background is what we've been working on. Now the foreground is transparent, and I know it's transparent because you can see these checks here, which means in GIMP when you see something that's a grey checkered colour, it means it's transparent. So I'm going to move over to my colour palette. I'm going to pick a yellowy colour. Let's move this and pick a bright yellow colour or a brighter yellow colour. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click in my bucket fill tool, and I'm going to fill this layer. So I'm going to make sure that foreground is selected, and I'm going to fill it. And you'll notice that it basically covers the background. Now, if I hide the layer using the eye icon, clicking it, the background is still there. It's just under the foreground. So I'm going to click and make it visible again. Then I'm going to take my background layer and drag it above the foreground layer. And because my background layer is opaque, meaning that it is not transparent, it is not see-through, it's hiding the foreground layer. But the foreground layer is still there. When I hide the background, I can see the foreground layer beneath it. So I'm going to drag my foreground layer up, and I can see it again obscuring the background layer. Now I'm going to click on the eraser tool, which is this button here, tool here. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to increase its size. The eraser tool is a bit like a brush in that you can increase its size, its aspect ratio, its hardness and its force. I'm going to move it to about 40, 41. And you can see the size on the screen. And I'm going to rub out some sections of the foreground layer. You'll notice that I have the foreground layer selected. So I'm erasing from the foreground layer, but you can see that underneath it, the background layer is still there, still visible. And I'm not, by erasing on the foreground layer, I'm not affecting the background layer. It's not changing the background layer. It still keeps its colours, it still keeps its shapes. It's only affecting what's in the foreground layer. And that's how the eraser tool works, is it will only erase from the layer that you have selected. Now if I click on background and start erasing, you'll notice that I'm erasing from the background layer. The brush tools are similar in that they work on the layer selected. Now I've got the background layer selected here. I'm going to pick a brush, I'm going to change the colour, I'm going to go back to the green colour that I used earlier, and I'm going to draw a line here. And you can see that it's not drawing anything because it's drawing it on the background layer. But when I hide the foreground, you can see the lines that I've just drawn. Now if I click on the foreground layer, I can draw directly onto the foreground layer. So both the eraser tool and the pen tool, and to be fair, all the other tools are dependent, they work depending on what layer you've got selected. And this is also one of the little pitfalls of using GIMP, where you can be drawing something, you know, I might want to draw a line and I'm thinking, why isn't it drawing? And it could be because I've got the wrong layer selected. Now, when you have completed your image, you can merge it into one image, one layer, by right clicking. So I'm going to right click on my foreground and I'm going to choose merge down, and it merges everything into a single layer. So one last thing I'm going to show you is something called filters. Now a filter is something that affects what the image looks like by applying a particular effect or style to it. And there's lots and lots and lots of filters in GIMP. Now with the layer selected and no active selection, so there's no crawling ants, the filter will apply to the whole layer. So I'm going to go to filters, and I'm going to go to decor, and I'm going to go to fog. I'm going to pick, I'm going to change the colour to blue, and I'm going to turn up the turbulence, and I'm going to turn down the opacity. I've just picked fog at random. And when I click OK, you'll notice it's added another layer with this sort of fog effect on top of it. And that's just an example of applying a filter to a layer. You can also apply a filter to a specific selection. So I'm going to click on my select tool. I'm going to pick fuzzy select, and I'm going to click on, I'm going to make sure background selected, and I'm going to click on green. And I'm going to go to filter, noise, and I'm going to apply some CIEHCICH noise. And you'll notice that it's kind of scuffed up the section that's selected, and you can change the values of these filters to make it look sort of, to change how scuffed it looks, to change its colour, and when you're ready you click OK, press Ctrl A, and you'll notice you've applied the filter just to that selection. And that's how you can apply filters in GIMP. So in the next set of videos after this one, you're going to look at creating some 2D, two-dimensional assets for our game. And you'll use some of the skills that you've learned in this video.